Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say welcome again. My name is Angie Grove. I'm the executive director at the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum, which is in Burlington, Vermont. And I am also on the History and Research Committee that is part of the Vermont 250th commemoration. Um, what is it called, Paul? What's the word I'm looking for?
State Commission.
Commission. Yeah, 250th Commemoration Commission. Yes. So there are multiple committees, and I'm on the History and Research Committee, and our committee was tasked some months ago with creating like an outreach presentation that could do a short overview of the Revolutionary War and its in Vermont, both Vermont's participation and the impact of in Vermont, and kind of what it means to commemorate this anniversary. I am joined today by a number of other committee members. Barbara Giffen is on the call. She's also in our committee, as is Professor Alexander Garrett, who's also on the committee with me, and as is Paul. And Paul is also a commission member. So Paul, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly, because you'll be kind of sharing the show with me today?
Sure. Yeah, so I have sat on the commission for quite some time now. I think I don't remember exactly how long the commission has been in existence, but I was asked to serve on behalf of the president of the university at the time, Suresh Garamella, to serve as his representative. So I'm here. I am an associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Vermont, where I oversee a portfolio broadly called Student Success. I'm also a professor of history. So I have a couple of different hats that I wear that connect or intersect with the commission's role. And I'll talk a little bit more after Angie's presentation about the commission and some of the opportunities available through the commission.
Great, thanks, Paul. So the plan for today, for this session, this should maybe be 40 minutes or less amount of time in total, but that's really going to depend on the participants who are on this webinar. So I'm going to speak first. I have a brief presentation that highlights what the 250th commemoration is, and the history of the Revolutionary War in Vermont and its impact on Vermonters and Americans. So I'm going to present that brief presentation. And then when I'm done, Paul is going to speak a little bit about the state commission and the resources they're offering for people. But the main reason for these webinars is to do networking and outreach for organizations, so that you all can think about what your organizations might do for the 250th commemoration, or to share with us what you're doing and share with each other and kind of build off those ideas as a larger community. So that's the purpose of this presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with the presentation. So I have shared my screen. So I hope that you can see it. Do you see the lake with the mountain in the background? Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a land acknowledgement. So first up, we wish to acknowledge that in Vermont, we are within the unceded territory of the original inhabitants of Endokina, or the Abenaki, and in the southwest portion, the Mohican people. Their traditional and ongoing relationships with the land call us to learn to be better caretakers of the land as well. We offer respect to their ancestors, their elders, and their relations, past, present, and emerging. We recognize and wish to honor the responsibility that accompanies this acknowledgement of those relationships. So 2026 will mark 250 years since 1776, which was a pivotal year in a larger historical era that included the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the outbreak of the American Revolution, and the creation of the political foundations of the United States of America. The years between 1775 and 1777 in particular were a watershed turning point that built upon what came before and set the stage for much of what was to come for the next 250 years. So how should Vermont commemorate this important period in our history? So first off, what is commemoration, and what does it mean to commemorate a historical anniversary? To commemorate is, quote, to call or to remembrance, end quote, or to mark an event by ceremony or an observance. We choose the word commemorate because it represents a wide range of ways in which diverse groups of people might choose to remember the anniversary. Historical anniversaries give us an opportunity to imagine a better world by drawing on the reference, pain, and hope of our collective history. So it's okay that people and groups will commemorate this anniversary in different ways. History is complicated, and learning about our history requires a grappling with perspectives that might change what we think we know about the past. As historians do their work, they will look at a wide range of evidence. They also examine the ways in which a host of factors such as class, gender, race, religion, or sexuality affect how historical events were experienced and understood by people in the past. History is for everyone and about everyone, and so is commemoration. So Vermont's 250th Anniversary Commission was created in 2020 to plan, coordinate, and promote observances and programming that commemorate this key moment in our nation's history. The commission aims to inspire all Vermonters to learn from our collective past in building stronger communities for the future. So we want to help you think about how your community, your historic site, your museum, your university, your historical society, or your group might commemorate this anniversary in a way that feels right for you. So the commission will highlight a few themes during this commemoration to help us think about the big picture about the past and our world today. First theme is forming identities. We'll examine how Vermont and Vermonters formed their identities during this time period. The signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776 created a confederation of American states with a new and independent American identity. And at the same time, Vermont was forming its own unique identity, including the formation of the Vermont Republic, which existed from 1777 to 1791. The second theme is conflict and struggle. We'll examine what conflict and struggle looked like in Vermont. Vermonters were deeply engaged in struggles that marked the American Revolution, both in their daily lives as well as the larger political, social, and military events that defined this period. The third theme is diversity of experience. We'll also look at the diversity of experiences during this time period. Many people in what is today Vermont found themselves caught in this tumultuous and historic moment. The responses were different depending on their race, religion, class, and gender. And the state's commemoration of the 250th anniversary will give voice to different ways in which Vermonters experienced this time period. And we'll also explore the legacy of this period over the past 250 years. The creation of the United States in 1776 was an earth-shaking historical event. And for many, the revolution was full of unfinished promises, setting the stages for battles to come over the next 250 years. The events and actions of this era laid the foundations of the country that we share today. So looking a little deeper into the first theme of forming identities, well, many of us are basically familiar with the general narrative of the period that goes something like, in 1776, the original 13 colonies separated from Great Britain by signing the Declaration of Independence, and this led to the American Revolutionary War, the founding of the United States of America as an independent country, and the great American experiment of representative democracy. While none of that is wrong, there is so much more to the story, and the state that is now Vermont was a key part of all of the stories. The truth is that the American population was decidedly split on the issue of independence. In the constantly shifting realities of the revolution, individuals were forced to make choices for themselves that sometimes defied a neat categorization, especially in the contested space of Vermont. And it wasn't just politicians, soldiers who conducted the revolution. Ordinary people contributed through their everyday actions while facing a reality of war. People of all races, genders, and classes participated, fighting for a range of causes. While some exerted their rights, others, including enslaved peoples and indigenous peoples, had their rights diminished or erased, and no one knew at the time how the conflict would end. Like many states, Vermont's story does not begin or end with the Declaration of Independence in 1776. In fact, Vermont was not even a British colony leading up to the Revolutionary War. Instead, it was the land that had been and continued to be inhabited by indigenous people, while also being contested by both New Hampshire and New York colonies. British colonial settlers started moving to Vermont in large numbers in the 1760s. Most settlers purchased land titles from New Hampshire to what they believed were the very western borders of New Hampshire. When New York won the legal claim to the land, however, these people automatically became residents of New York. While some Vermont residents were happy to pay New York's fees, others staged protests, some violent. A volunteer militia was formed called the Green Mountain Boys, which was instrumental in the resistance of New York's attempts to control the territory. This was a highly controversial time that resulted in a politically strong contingent in Vermont declaring its independence from New York in 1777, calling itself the Independent Vermont Republic. The Vermont Republic sent representatives to both the United States Congress and to British and Canada to negotiate terms of admittance. Vermont did join the United States as the 14th state in 1791. The lived experience of the time varied drastically by gender, race, religion, and class. Women exerted political power, not always in the traditional realms of politics, but through their own everyday actions. With the men at war, women's roles in farming and housekeeping expanded. They fed armies and exercised purchasing power in line with popular boycotts, and some upper-class women even had opportunities for fundraising and petitioning. The revolution also meant something different for Black Americans. The institution of slavery was found throughout the colonies, and some enslaved Blacks hoped to seize their freedom by fleeing or joining the British Army. White fears of rebellion tightened controls on the slave system, while the military demands of the war opened new opportunities for military service and personal liberty. And enslaved people asserted control through everyday resistance. Some northern colonies and states eventually sought to embody new ideals of individual freedom and independence by enshrining gradual emancipation into their state constitutions, including in Vermont. When delegates of the old Constitution House in Windsor declared Vermont as an independent republic in 1777, they sought to gradually emancipate enslaved people when they reached a certain age. However, like many other free states, vague wording and power dynamics ensured that slavery persisted in Vermont. Even those who did gain freedom from slavery found that they never became totally free, facing discrimination and an inability to exercise full American rights. And the American Revolution tore across the fabric of Indigenous life. It continued a nearly 2-century trajectory associated with European trade and colonization, a trajectory of altering long-standing alliances and political structures. The revolution forced Indigenous peoples, as much as any others, to make consequential choices about their futures within a conflict that they had not begun. Many died because of the conflict and its indirect impacts. Others were forced to relocate. However, Native people and culture persist throughout the trauma of the revolution and during the following 250 years of marginalization. Today, Native communities and peoples continue to live as thriving Indigenous cultures here in Vermont. The creation of the United States in 1776 was an earth-shaking historical event. For the first time in centuries, a new nation was created based on the profound assertion of the equality of humankind. For many, the revolution was full of unfinished promises, though, setting the stage for battles to come over the next 250 years. Many in the United States continue today to aspire to the ideals established during the revolution. The events and actions of this era laid the foundations for the country that we share today, and it is everyday people from a range of backgrounds who shaped what happened during these important years. By considering the ordinary and extraordinary lived experiences of a diverse range of people in revolutionary America, we gain a fuller understanding of the nation we have become and what continues to both unite and divide those who identify as Americans. So, the 250th Anniversary Commission builds on the work of Vermonters who remember the American Revolution throughout many different moments in the history of our nation and our state. We continue to learn from how these anniversaries were commemorated, identifying who was included, what stories were shared, what stories were not shared. Looking at these anniversaries and our evolving history helps us to understand who we are as a nation today, sparking several important questions for us to consider. Like, what does it mean to identify as an American? What does it mean to identify as a Vermonter? And what can we learn from the diverse experiences of revolutionary America? How does the change making and revolutionary spirit of the revolution travel through us into this century and the next? So coming very soon, the Vermont 250th anniversary website will include things like an events calendar, a list of resources, and background materials. Please consider following us on social media at Vermont 250. And the Vermont's 250th Anniversary Commission looks forward to exploring these ideas and so much more together with all Vermonters as we head into this important anniversary. Okay, so that hopefully gives you a little bit of background about what the Revolutionary War was like in Vermont and what it means to commemorate that historic time. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Paul now, who sits on the commission, talk a little bit more about what work the commission is doing and what resources they have for you.
Great. Thank you, Angie. So I'm going to be very brief. The commission began about 4 years ago. It was created by the governor, and it was intended to draw a diverse range of people from the Vermont communities that the state represents, that the governor represents, obviously. And it includes a variety of people from a whole range of organizations. So people from the Vermont Humanities Council, myself from the University of Vermont, the director of the Vermont Art Council, people who are involved in a historical reenactment of the efforts of the Green Mountain Boys, but also of the Revolutionary War more generally, directors of local museums and local historical societies, state officials, including the director of historic preservation in the state. So a number of people, including the director of the Champlain Valley National Heritage as well. So organizations. So we have a broad range of people who are represented. The commission's work to date has been discussing what, in the first instance, what the role of the commission was to be. And it was determined fairly early on that the commission was not created with the intention of coming up with a whole program or set of programs to commemorate the 1776 date, but rather to kind of function as a kind of clearinghouse, as a space in which we gather and provide information, in which we facilitate commemorations on a local level and on a state level by providing resources, providing guidance, and hopefully providing some inspiration to people who are interested in thinking about the commemoration at their particular local community level or within a historical society level or within a museum level. And the other role of the commission, I think, is to sort of connect people, which is the point of these webinars. So one of the things that we were hoping that a webinar like this will achieve, and we're holding three others after this one, is to just give people an opportunity to come together and ask some questions about the kinds of work that other people on the call might be doing, on the webinar might be doing around this issue of commemoration, and also just provide you with a little bit of information about the commission's activities. I did want to highlight for you a couple of things that will appear on the 250th website, and you can get information about this if you're interested by emailing. I think the best thing to do is to email Megan Albert, who is present here. And Megan, maybe you can put your email address in the chat if people need specific details. But three things that I wanted to highlight very briefly that are opportunities for people who are interested in funding some kind of commemorative opportunity and event, experience, whatever. One is the National Park Service Semi-Quincentennial Grant Program. This is open to applicants from local governments, nonprofit organizations, public and nonprofit institutions of higher education, and indigenous groups or indigenous tribes. The resources are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. And you can find more information. This relates in large part to buildings and structures and sites, but you can find information about this on the website when the website goes live, which I hope will be very soon. The Vermont 250th Community Planning Grant, if I remember correctly, is being administered through the Vermont Historical Society. These are $1,000 grants, and Megan, correct me if I'm wrong about that, but these are $1,000 grants intended to help local communities with planning and perhaps with creating activities at the local level for programs, events, developing resources, et cetera. And these grants are meant to fund activities through 2026 and 2027. And again, these are $1,000 grants that are open to all Vermont communities. And then lastly is a fairly substantial grant program run through the Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership Grant Program. There are a variety of opportunities here that range in amounts, but two of the most notable ones are the CVNHP, those Champlain Valley special program funding projects, which range from $10,000 to $40,000 and have an emphasis on what they're calling their Making of Nations interpretive theme. So these are multi-jurisdictional or regional projects that interpret, highlight, and support marking the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. And then we also have the we also have the CVNHP Core Grant Program, which has a range of different grants, the Making of Nations Interpretive Theme Grants, which are up to $10,000, local heritage grants, $5,000 for local projects or $10,000 for regional or multi-jurisdictional projects, collection grants to help with the development of collections, and internship grants to support the hiring of interns for the creation of internship programs. So lots of opportunities available. The commission is made up of people with different areas of expertise, some with great content expertise, others with great organizational expertise. So I think at that point I will stop. And I think the best way to open the conversation is to let people ask questions if they have them, and we will try to the best of our ability to answer them. We may need Megan to weigh in as well, but also to maybe just talk about the kinds of activities you are engaged in your own communities or in your own organizations, and kinds of activities or kinds of opportunities that you see moving forward. So I think I'll stop there. And Angie, do you want to moderate the conversation, or do you want me to? I'm fine either way.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to moderate. In fact, I already was going to put Zach and Alexi on the spot. These are two American Revolution, early America historians, Norwich University for Zach Bennett and St. Mike's for Alexi Garrett. And then, of course, we have Paul here for UVM. I know, Paul, you're not American history as much as the British, but and you're also, I believe, more 20th century. Is that correct, Paul? Yeah, but that's okay. We still have three higher ed institutions here: Norwich, St. Mike's, and UVM. So I would love to hear from Alexi and Zach first, and then maybe Paul also. What are your universities planning? Who's planning it? What's going on there?
I can start. So we have a Peace and War Center here at Norwich, and we're accustomed to inviting people nationally, internationally to discuss themes relative to really war and warfare. And I've talked with our director of that program, Professor Travis Morris, and we're thinking about combining some of the themes from the American Revolution, especially in like a military context. And I'm really encouraged to hear about this Making Nations theme as something as we think about planning this for next year, as something that we could easily kind of intersect, like a lot of the themes or lessons from the American Revolution to conflicts around the world right now. So that's something that I'm thinking about at the moment.
Thanks, Zach. What about you, Alexi? What's St. Mike's plans?
Hi, can everyone hear me? I feel like I've unmuted now. Yes? Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Alexi Garrett. I am an early American history professor at St. Michael's College, and I actually am the point person to design anything happening at St. Michael's College. So we're in the process right now of designing a few things. We're even kind of before the grant writing period. We're just kind of still gathering ideas. So some of these ideas are, we're planning new courses in the history department for all students to take. We are planning a new 100 level survey course and a 400 level, so upper class kind of majors course centered around the American Revolutionary War in Vermont. So those are being offered next year. And then we are still working on figuring out kind of like key internship opportunities for our St. Mike students to be paired with museums like the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum and other museums that are working on specifically American Revolutionary events in celebration of the 250th. I'm also working on getting some funding for my own research assistants for my work on the American Revolution. So we're kind of doing that internally for students. But then also we are hoping, so if anyone on this call wants to get in touch, we are hoping to work with local and regional historical reenactor groups, but also scholars, kind of anyone who wants to get involved in the American Revolutionary I was going to say reenactments. So anyone who wants to get involved with the reenactments, but anyone who wants to get involved in some way with the celebrations, we do want to plan campus-wide events here. So not just for St. Mike students and faculty, but also for the public writ large. We'd like to have either kind of recreation, like American Revolutionary War recreation groups, historical interpretation groups, or we're thinking about putting on a small conference as well where people could present their work. So I know it seems kind of like a wide variety of things because it is. So we're kind of trying to do everything that we can to promote the American Revolutionary War here through St. Mike's as an intellectual institution as well as a public institution in Colchester. So yeah, if anyone on here is interested in getting in touch and figuring something out, please email me. My email should be on the website. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Alexi. I know I've put you in touch with Whitcomb's Rangers reenactment group before, but there's also Warner's Regiment, and there's a brand new reenactment group based out of the Bennington area as well. And they're always looking for places to do more events, but they are, their summers are usually completely booked up with battle reenactments at different sites like Ty and Hubbardton. But if you look beyond the summer, then they to have more.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Insider tip.
Insider tip. We're definitely looking for things to happen actually during the school year. So that's, fall or spring semester. So I'll have to be back in touch with the Bennington folks. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And Paul, I know we want to hear from you about what UVM's planning so far too, but I see that there's a hand up. So maybe I'll call on Gwen and then we can jump back to Paul at some point. So Gwen, can you go ahead and just let us know, like introduce yourself, what group you might be representing or thinking about representing for 250th work, and go ahead with your question.
I'm on mic now. Okay. I can't get my camera to work, unfortunately, but anyways, I live in Hartford, White River Junction, and I am on the Hartford Historical Society, and I am the chairperson for the 250th activities here in White River Junction. And people can hear me? Okay. And potentially Hartford's Historical Society will end up with the calendar for the Upper Valley, because we have a bi-state community here, with the city of Lebanon, Hanover and Enfield and such. So, and right now New Hampshire does not have a 250th commission operating that I'm aware of. So there's a lot, I guess there's a lot of possibilities down here, and trying to tie together, different things. So, and when it comes to higher education, one of the things I was thinking about, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing in the background. I don't know how to stop it. So, is, looking at, I'd love to look at some of these legacy issues that we, they have the roots in our country's beginnings, like things like land use, and immigration. And I would love to see how we've approached and dealt with these issues over time. Land use comes up as a big one when you look at indigenous peoples, or putting the highways through in the mid 20th century. The fellow in Heartland who was famous when he burned himself in his farm when he did not want to give up his land for I-91. And then you look now at land use, and we have a whole nother set of issues we're dealing with. And you look at all this, it goes from from the 1760s to now. I would love to look at a series of interesting little group discussions around our greater community, but that would require people who really know those issues. And the first thing I think of is our institutions of higher education. And if someone was putting in time into a public discussion, it wouldn't want to be just Woodstock and Hartford, but it might be something they could put it in a couple different places around the state so people could chat. Because that would be a lot of time to put together a talk potentially. But anyway, that was one of the first things I thought was, how could I tap into folks in higher ed that might have the knowledge base to put something like that together easily? Because there's so many different interesting issues. And I have a whole brainstorm list of that. But anyway, I'll get off and let someone else talk.
No, Gwen, thank you for sharing. That's great ideas. So to make sure I understood, the main thing is that you're thinking about maybe utilizing people in higher ed as experts who could either give lectures or maybe facilitate conversations about the legacies of the revolution. Is that what you're thinking?
Right, that's what I was thinking. Is they might even know people. When you look at history departments and knowledgeable folks, they might even know people. Right, and I thought of, when it comes to land use laws, the first thing I thought of was Vermont Law School, right, in Royalton. But there's so many different topics and so many different places to go. But that was one of the things I thought of. But I like, when Alexi, I think your name, you went go by, the idea of including campuses with events was another great idea. So
go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think those are really great ideas, Gwen. And one of the things I was just thinking about, I don't know that we've talked about this on the commission, but it might be really useful if we, I think about time and the use of resources, but if we were to create, like, on the website, a reading list for people that was sort of relevant material literature that relates to Vermont, but also relates to the broader national context. And then maybe what we could do is task or ask people in higher ed to kind of come up with a set of questions that people might organize discussion groups around, or something like that, right? That you could, so that we provide some expertise through the higher ed institutions and give people the opportunity, like, here are some questions you might start a conversation about this book, with people. But that's just one thing. And as we build the website, and this will be happening in the coming weeks. I think we're just waiting on the state to do a final approval. And Megan, maybe that's already there and I can't remember, but if it is, apologies. But in terms of the other thing about higher ed is that I think if we can partner as institutions, that we could create both individual events on specific campuses, but maybe also a kind of statewide event in which we are pulling together people who have research interest in these areas, creating opportunities for people to share information and share research. So, I'm going to be working at UVM. There are a couple of things that we're doing. So, one thing is we have one of the things I oversee is an internship program, and we are starting a new internship program. We have a program called Communities of Practice, which creates internship opportunities for our students. But we're doing one now around cultural heritage institutions, which Angie, I will be talking to you about very soon. So that includes museums, historical societies, et cetera. And I think that we're launching it in the fall in 2025. So it kind of coincides really nicely with the dates of the revolution and of activity in Vermont. So I think we're gonna do some stuff there. The other thing that is interesting about UVM is that, of course, 200 years ago, Lafayette, in his tour through the United States, visited Burlington and laid the cornerstone for Old Mill, as all of you will know. And there's a lot of interest in us commemorating that event in connection to the revolution as well. And while they're somewhat well, they're not disconnected, but they are different, right? I think there are ways in which we might link that commemorative event with 1775 and 1776. So, the difficulty is, of course, Lafayette visited Burlington at the end of June in 1825, and that's a bad time on an academic campus to try to organize events. So we may have to think creatively about when we would do stuff. But there are lots of opportunities. But I think the planning is just getting going on my campus. And of course, we're at a disadvantage because our early Americanist retired, and we haven't yet replaced her, although I think we will within the next year or two. So anyway.
Thanks, Paul. Megan, go ahead. I know that there is some work towards a reading list. So can you talk a little more about that?
There is. There are actually 2 reading lists that are available, will be available on the website, which should be up within the next few weeks, as Paul had said. And one of them is a suggested reading list, which all of the books have been ordered to be available through the state of Vermont library system. And so it'll be essentially an interlibrary system, which some of them are physical, but a lot of them will also be digital and audio. And then the other one is a historic fiction list, which I don't know for sure yet if those will be available through the library system, but either way, those ones on the first list will be available for everyone also within the next few weeks. I don't have an exact date yet, but stay tuned.
Thanks, Megan. Also, Megan, can you introduce who you are, what your role is in relation to the Vermont 250th Commission, please?
Hi, yes. Sorry, my camera also will not work. Technological issues with Teams. But I am the event coordinator for the Vermont 250th Anniversary Commission. So if you have any questions about what the commission is doing, please feel free to email me. I put my email in the chat.
Thanks, Megan. And I also wanted to follow up with something I heard Gwen talk about at the beginning of her sharing time, was about the idea that the commemoration of the America's 250th is not just about history. Like, I'm a historian. I know there's a lot of historians on this call right now, and historical societies and history museums are represented here. And that tends to be the most represented group that is talking about the commemoration. But the commemoration is actually about America today and like looking back. And so I just want to say, Gwen, to your idea about looking more at the legacy of the revolution, all of the granting sources are also funding projects that are doing that. They're actually so my insider tip is they're being quite liberal with their interpretation of a connection to the 250th. So if you have an idea and you can say that it's tied into looking at the legacy of the revolution, then they'll approve it. Or if you can say it's looking at new revolutionary perspectives or new revolutionary ideas for today, they're also funding projects for those kinds of strategies, or that kind of PR twist as well. So the funding for 250th projects is funding things that are looking at legacies and stuff that you were talking about, Gwen. So my other insider tip is that the Vermont Historical Society, their 250th grants, they're much smaller than some of the others, but they're very quick and easy to apply for. The other ones that Paul mentioned, the Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership, those are funded through the National Park Service, and then also they get funding from other federal agencies. Because those are federal grants, those require a lot more paperwork, and their timeline is quite elongated. So I put this in the chat box, but for fiscal year 2026, so for projects that will happen in 2026, the grant deadline just closed in October, early October for 2024. So the next round of the Champlain Valley National Heritage Partnership grants, and Zach, you were interested in their Making Nations one, that won't open until September of 2025, and that will be for funding projects that will happen in 2027. So I just want to, kind of give you the insider tip on the federal grants are more money, but they require a lot more paperwork, and they also have a much longer schedule for applying and getting the money. Okay. So Megan, there's a question about the website in the chat, and I think you might be answering it, but just take a look if you haven't already seen it. So I'd like to ask Bill. It looks like we have someone on the call named Bill. Bill, would you like to introduce yourself and what kind of group that you're with, planning for 250th stuff, or what your plans might be? Maybe we will hear from Bill later. Rich, I don't know if you can still hear me. I know Rich is with Fort Ty, so I know Fort Ty has a ton of stuff coming up. But Fort Ty's in New York, so what does that have to do with Vermont? Tell us.
Well, the Ethan Allen story bleeds across the border, among other things. And historically, in the 18th century, during the Revolution, Ticonderoga was a broader campus that included what is now known as Mount Independence. So we really look at the history on both sides of Lake Champlain. Is it Alexi? I've been taking notes. I'm going to reach out to you by email.
Please do.
And Zach, we've worked with Dave Ulbrich quite a bit, so I will reach out to you as well and let you know what kind of things. We have graduate fellowships that last 10 weeks during the summer for graduate students. Those are going to be posted in November for next summer. I'm primarily involved with teacher education, and I actually sit on the School and Education Subcommittee of the Vermont 250th as part of that. We do a major conference every September on the American Revolution, and this past September we started our first of 5 related to the 250th. And for us, the 250th is 1774 to 1783, so we're going to be in commemoration up through my retirement, probably. But there's a lot of great stuff. I'm happy to answer questions. Our Fort website is just fortticonderoga.org. And on the Learn and Explore tab, one of the tabs is Ticonderoga 250th. And that's a great place to find information about many of the things we have. But I'm happy to reach out to anyone, and I'll put my email in the chat.
Thanks, Rich, for sharing. One of the things that Rich didn't mention that Fort Ticonderoga has also taken the initiative is gathering a kind of a loose partnership, mostly for PR purposes, but and some public education, with all of the Revolutionary War related historical sites in the historical Northern Department. So our American Revolution historians here know the Northern Department was assigned by, I believe, the Continental Congress. And I think Schuyler was in charge of it for a good while there. And so Fort Ty has a website that has information of all of those sites, and there's a number of sites in Vermont listed there, and these are all sites that you can go and visit. So I think I have the right website, and I just put it in the chat. I think it's northerndepartment.org, but my internet connection.
I just
Go
put it
ahead.
in the chat as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, great. So yeah, please check that out so you can see what your site-based resources are if you and your group want to do any kind of site-based education or field trips, or you want to reach out to the people who work at those sites as well. Thanks, Rich. Bill, if you're here and want to share, we'd love to hear about your plans. Okay. Barbara, you sit on the committee with me and Alexi, and I know that you're in charge of some historical society work. So do you have,
Yes.
Does your organization have plans already in place for the 250th?
We're kind of wondering, we have a publication called a Quarterly, which hasn't been going out quarterly, COVID, but I was mulling over doing a series of documentaries kind of thing going into the Revolutionary War. We do have the Vermont 250 on our website as a link. And now that AI, no, it's Internet Archives, IA, has been hacked, our website is looking pretty bare because we upload everything to Internet Archives. So hopefully that will be back on and we can get some things uploaded to that. But keep your fingers crossed with that. So yeah, we're still plugging away, and of course the DAR is doing their thing. They had a traveling show at Crown Point this past summer, and the dedication to the Patriots at Bennington. I love your shirt, by the way, Angie.
Thank you. As you know, I went to the dedication in Bennington. That was a nice ceremony.
Yes, ma'am. Good to see you there. But other than that, I am still kind of working in the little recesses of my brains how to work Rutland into. They don't get excited about much because they're right in the middle, but maybe we can light some fires.
Okay. Thanks, Barb, for sharing. And Bill, I see you're having technical issues with the microphone too. I'm sorry to hear that. But Bill has put in the chat for the group that he's in Arlington and represents the local historical society there. Thank you for sharing, Bill. I just thought of something I want to share, and then I know that we're going to be wrapping up shortly. But for both Bill and Gwen in particular, and because I bet Barbara's already done this, because Barbara's usually on top of things, but there is some sort of like statement or commitment that Vermont is asking towns to sign. So I don't know if your town has already signed this, and Megan, maybe you know more about it than I do, but there's some sort of like statement of commitment that the state of Vermont is asking towns within Vermont. Yeah, the town resolution to say our town is resolved to commemorate the 250th. So great. Yeah, Gwen, you already know about it. So that's a starting point. I would say if your town hasn't already adopted this town resolution, I would recommend finding out how you can. Okay, Bill, your Arlington's on it as well. Awesome. Okay, well then, for those of you who live in towns that might not have, I live in Burlington. I don't know if Burlington has adopted this, so maybe I should go to a town meeting and find out. So Gwen, what for Wish It Was Easy, is adopting the town resolution not simple?
No, it's not easy. We're definitely facing a time where time and money resources are tight, as you probably know, with our state politics and our excuse me, our bad weather. And I found when I approached the town officials that it was like, you do this, not us, kind of. It was a little tough, and there's definitely multiple reasons for that. So putting together a team of people in town and a team of organizations who can really commit a small amount of time resources, that's the biggest thing, to helping out with an event or with coordinating things in a bigger picture for the town, and going back to the town to say, yes, we have people committed to this, so it's not just going to fall on the backs of town employees. It has not been easy to do. So there's no resolution until there's really a committee of organizations and people that are actually going to do something. But we also can't do it without our town officials. So yeah. And it's only because I'm home on disability that I even have time myself to do it. So yeah, it's interesting. It's not an easy thing, and I think back to 1976 when I was a school child. Even our teams of reenactors back then, there was a lot of reenactors around the East Coast. And what we have for reenactors today down in Bennington or over at Fort Number 4 in Charleston, New Hampshire, or wherever, down at Ticonderoga, is a much smaller group of people. There's not hordes of people like there were in 50 years ago. So it's a challenge, but we can do it.
Well, thank you for sharing your experience, Gwen. I'm sorry, I hadn't really looked into the town's resolution, so I thought it'd be as simple as them just voting, yes, we resolve to commemorate, just like a feel-good moment. But yeah, I guess passing a resolution and actually fulfilling the resolution's promise are two very different things, and the latter takes a lot of effort and time. Well, thank you for your effort and time. We have literally 60 seconds left. If anyone has any last statements or anything they want to share or ask. Okay, well, then I think we want to thank you for your time. And I know I will bring some feedback from what I've heard from you back to the History and Research Committee, and Paul sits on the commission, so I'm sure he'll be sharing, some of the feedback that we received from you, including the challenge of the town resolutions, to the larger commission, as will Megan. So thank you all so much for joining us today, and we hope to hear more about your projects as they're developed, and we can help you out if we can.
And if you know people who might benefit from this presentation, there are 3 more opportunities. And I think while they're geared to specific groups of folks, anyone is welcome. So feel free to reach out to Megan if you have a name that you'd like to receive a link for the next meetings. That I'm sure that would be acceptable, right, Megan?
Absolutely. I just put my email in the chat once again.
Great.
And I will email everyone that participated a summary of the webinar.
Great.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, Angie and Paul.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.